Okay, we are here for the last and final session. Hopefully you've got a lot of value out of it. I certainly think my wife and I, we've got stuff to talk about and process from here. Sarah, any final comments from you in terms of the...
I think it's great that you've kept up to this last one, and I think that's a little bit of a metaphor for this whole idea of being a confident parent, just to hang in there and play the long game of making those little changes along the way, and trying to just get that stance of being calm and confident in yourself, and just see those little incremental changes make a difference.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to add is, as a church, we love supporting families. We love kind of giving things that would help people, I guess, in their roles as mums, dads, husbands, wives. We recognise it can be pretty tough, and it's great to have a community around you to support you. And we're grateful for this opportunity to do that. As we go through the year, we'll have other things we would love to let you know about that. But enjoy tonight, and we look forward to seeing you around. Okay.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
So, fourth week, been quite a marathon, and that's an appropriate metaphor for tonight because we're talking about running the long course of parenting. And I wonder, now you've come to week 4, what you now are basing your confidence on. Is it different to back a month ago when we first met and started to think about the Parent Confidence Project? Is your confidence and what you're looking at to figure out if you're doing a good enough job, has what you're looking at shifted at all? A little bit? I'm hearing some yeses. Well, we'll pull it all together tonight, and what I'll be looking at is confident leadership as a parent that moves beyond just getting a momentary good response from a child to thinking about character development over the course of a child's life and how a parent can contribute to that. We're going to look tonight not just about big picture versus quick fix. The whole theme is parent leadership. And one of the topics that has been in the Q&A every meeting has been, how do you deal with the differences in parenting partnership? How do you deal with the differences perhaps with a grandparent who has a different way of managing your child to you? So we're going to look at that. We are going to look a bit tonight about the marriage for those that are married in parenting, and just how problems in a marriage can escape and be focused in on children. So there's a lot to cover tonight. I hope you're ready for the ride. Big picture implications. Let me start with one parent's story, and I wonder if you'll be able to relate to this story. I'm thinking of a mum who I'll call Shari, and she has a son called Daniel who's age 10, and amongst her children, Daniel is the one who is forgetful, struggles to remember, struggles to focus, and regularly she gets texts from Daniel saying, "Mum, I forgot my homework again. Please, I really need it. I've done it all. You helped me with it last night. Please, will you bring it to school?" And Shari was so concerned about Daniel's progress at school that she would regularly drop everything from her day and run the homework or the lunchbox, very common, lunchbox left on the kitchen bench, and Shari would run that up to school. It was becoming a pattern, but for Shari, she could not see that there was any alternative because she really cared about her son's school performance. She wanted him to be happy. She didn't want him to experience the distress of the teacher's annoyance with him, or she didn't want him to experience the distress of sitting around the lunch area and not having his food and wondering what he was going to do. Can you relate to that dilemma where a parent is organised in their decision-making by their child's distress and their happiness for the moment? But think about the bigger picture of what Daniel is learning from being rescued like that. And we'll return to Shari later on, but also think about Shari's parenting partner. And imagine what you would predict between the two parents around forgetful Daniel. Pretty typically, you can predict that Daniel's dad, who I'll call Matt, is quite critical of Shari giving in to him all the time. And in response to that criticism of her going easy on Daniel, Matt tends to be very strict and hard with him. So we're going to think tonight about that, and I'll revisit the story of Shari and Matt and Daniel as we go along. But think about the parenting tension developing around how one parent is managing and how easy it is for the other parent to go in the opposite direction. Is that a pattern any of you can recognize? I can see a few heads nodding. So let's do a recap. Where have we been over these last 3 weeks? And now we're in week 4. Here are the topics. Where is my energy directed? We started with that, and have you heard that being repeated every week? As a parent, is my energy going into trying to make my child happy or successful or well-behaved? Is that where my energy's going? Or is my energy going into what kind of parent am I choosing to be? What's in my control as a parent? The second week, we looked at worrying about a child and how that can take over the way we connect with a child. How to worry well. How do you worry in a way that doesn't create an intense monitoring of your child? How can you think about the reality needs of your child? And do you remember we talked about, is my worry for my child based on the facts of today or the worry about the future, the what if worry, which is a complete bottomless pit? If you're worried about something for the future, what do? You start looking for evidence of it. You start monitoring the child for what you fear. And sure enough, you will find evidence for what you're projecting and what you're fearing. And from that evidence, it's so easy to then start doctor Googling, finding people who will treat the child. And that is not the kind of parenting facilitation that one wants. It doesn't enable a child to have good breathing space to be the best that they can be when they're over worried about. Last week, it was a big week. How did you go taking on board the idea of discipline of a child that comes from the experience of parent conviction rather than a push on the you must, you should, why don't you, if you don't do that, I will do this kind of pressure on the child rather than a calm inner conviction from the parent. And I think that the I position is so important. I'm going to give you a few more examples tonight before we move into leadership and the big picture, which is tonight. Am I thinking big picture? Or have a think back over the last week. How much of your parenting has been a knee-jerk response just to get a quick peace in the moment, as opposed to stopping and thinking, what will my child be learning about becoming a responsible, independent young person from the way I'm parenting today. So let's revisit the I position from last week. Just a quick review. You notice the first thing. Observe, observe, observe. I hope you're becoming better observers over these weeks we've been meeting together. What have you noticed is the effect of stepping back as a parent and observing the way you interact with your child and asking questions of the effect you're having on the child. The very act of becoming a better observer moves your brain from reactive lower brain to thoughtful, wise upper brain. Observing is good for our neurology. Stepping back, noticing, seeing the patterns. So if that's all you took away tonight, if you've had a really exhausting day and you doze off right now, that's fine. Because if you've just got the idea that being a better observer of your interactions with your child and asking yourself, what's the effect of how I'm interacting? Is that promoting my child's responsible independence? Or, without me realizing it, is the way I'm responding to my child facilitating reactivity from them, dependence, or reactive rebellion, which is not helpful for the development of maturity in a child. We asked last week how much of your parenting has a focus on a you posture, a you message, a you energy direction. You need to, you should, you must. And you remember the contrast of how much am I as a parent speaking and acting on what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And how do you figure out what you're willing to do and not willing to do? You have to think about your parent job description, your parent principles. And we'll look a little bit more at that tonight. I'm going to be presenting some ideas on formulating a parent job description so that you've got a kind of a map, a principle map for what you can take a stand on. Do you remember, this is so important, I have to repeat it, that I said last week, a parent I position is not a parenting technique. It's an inner conviction of representing yourself as an adult to your child. And a child can tell the difference. They can. We all can tell the difference when somebody speaks from a position of, I'm not willing to do this because I'm committed to bringing my very best to you, and I love you, and I want you to have every chance of flourishing, and that's why I'm saying no. A child will listen to that. Probably you've stood up and listened to that. Because they can tell that it isn't something you've taken out of a parenting handbook. It's something that comes from your inner commitment to your parenting leadership. So here are a few more examples of the parent I position. And see if you can apply some of these to your own parenting situation, whatever the age of your child. So here's one in terms of school homework or requirements. A parent saying, I see it as your responsibility to satisfy what the school's requiring. And therefore, I'm not going to step in at the last minute and fill in the gaps for you if you haven't managed to do it on time. That is a parent I position. And that is a big picture stance for a parent, isn't it? Because that's not a fun short-term situation. You've got a child who hasn't got their requirements done on time, and what are they going to experience when they get to school the next day? Are you willing to tolerate the short-term distress and discomfort for the bigger picture, learning about life and good character and responsibility? Here's another one. I mentioned this in the Q&A last week, but this is kids who are fighting. And it's so easy when siblings are having their back and forth and accusations and not playing well together or cooperating well and calling you to come in and be the adjudicator. It's so easy to move into you position. Now you stop that and you go over to that corner, and you stop that and go over to that corner and tell me what's happened, and I'll be the judge and jury. There's no I position in that. Instead, an I position is, I expect that you know how to cooperate and play together well. I'm going to give you a chance to bring your best to that, but you've only got 5 minutes. And if you haven't managed to, when I come back in 5 minutes, then all of the toys that are privilege, not rights, are going to be packed away for the rest of the evening. You hear that? It's principle-based. It's big picture. And one more example. Another one that I spoke to last week about a parent's generosity. Do you remember last week I talked about a parent asking, am I standing on something that's in my control, or am I trying to impose an external restraint on my child? And this example of a parent withholding their generosity because they have experienced disrespect or belligerence from their child, whatever the age of the child, to say, I'm not willing to take you to the park as we usually do, or to give you a lift to your friend's place, or to drive you to school, or to go ahead with the manicure I was going to pay for you and your friends. Can you hear I'm moving through every age group? And it doesn't matter what the content is, the principle is the same. A parent gives many privileges every day, acts of generosity, which they love to do for their child. But if the child is responding disrespectfully, is not keeping up their side of the responsibility, it's within a parent's control to say, no, I'm not going to be generous when I can see that you haven't pulled your weight with a task that is just part of the deal of being in our household. Do you get the flow of it? I hope it's been helpful to revisit a bit of that, because it really ties into tonight very well, parent leadership. So big picture change compared to short-term change. Have a think over your day as a parent. Can you think of any things that you said yes to just for the short-term ease of it? Or things that you did just because it felt easier today, even though in the long term it's not what you would prefer to do? I remember all the time kind of picking up towels in the bathroom just because it was easier than leaving them there and the clothes on the floor and defining myself to my child that afternoon when they got home from school. Sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself. In the short term, it makes life a bit easier. We're all busy, we're all tired, but what is the effect of that on your children's development? So how much of our parenting energy goes into a quick fix, a quick change, relieving the distress of the moment, or how much of our parenting energy is appreciating that change is slow? And if over the course of these parenting seminars, you've been thinking, gosh, I have gotten into some patterns with my children over many years that have them quite dependent on me to rescue or do for them, or that ignore holding a good eye position, and you've gotten into some entrenched patterns, you could be feeling quite discouraged. But I want to encourage you tonight that if you can start to shift yourself in relation to your children, and you can tolerate that the change won't happen overnight, and you'll get some pushback from your children because they're used to you doing the predictable thing. But you're in charge of not giving in to the pushback and sticking with your new position. And it will make a difference in the bigger picture, whatever the age of your child. It's worth it. I'm convinced of that. So there it is, remembering again that the goal that you're working towards is promoting responsible, independent babies, in tolerating that they're not going to be soothed straight away, right through to 22-year-olds learning to tolerate that you're not going to drop everything if they haven't gotten their act together to organise to get the bus to university on time. So from cradle right through, here is a key to your job description. So a little bit of research, and this comes from my own PhD research in thinking, in interviewing parents whose adolescents are in treatment, mental health treatment, an intensive program. And you may remember that I interviewed parents at the beginning of the young person's treatment, at discharge 12 weeks later, and then 6 months follow-up. And there are some really good clues to the parents that were doing well 6 months after as to what went into that change from helplessness and hopelessness to a renewed sense of hope. And this is a key. Here are some quotes. I've reduced my sense of urgency that my child needs to be fixed in the 10 weeks of this program. When parents could leave the program learning that they can make a difference, they didn't feel the urgency to find a medical fix for their child. And that was incredibly relieving and generating new hope for them. Here's another quote from a parent. I've learned through my involvement in this program that if I just meet my daughter's needs all the time, it's not going to be helpful to her, so I've learned to say no. I've learned to take a stand, and here it is. Even though it hurts me as a parent, I know it's improving her future. It's a great quote, isn't it? It just encapsulates a big picture view of parenting. And one more from a mother. When she says that she's struggling, I've now learnt to say that, you know, struggle's a part of life. You can deal with it. And previously, this mum says, I know I would have responded with more concern and just wanting to remove life struggles. You know that a lot of the ideas I'm presenting come from the researcher, psychiatrist, Dr. Murray Bowen, who did his research in the 50s, 60s, 70s. He died in the 90s, but he's left a legacy of a very unique theory of seeing every individual as part of a family system where we're all affecting each other. And if one parent can become more of a parent leadership, a leader can focus on their leadership and lift up their functioning in the family, Here is the fantastic news of Bowen's discovery. One person changes, takes more of an I position in the family, and gradually another person lifts up their functioning. And then another, and then another, and then another. One person works on themselves and lifting their functioning as a mature, more grown-up, calmer, clearer, more principled parent. It changes the whole family. But you're not trying to change the family. You're changing you. And here are some of Bowen's ideas on what goes into parent or family leadership. See what you think of this list. The family leader possesses the courage to define themselves. The leader is invested in the welfare of their family as much as in their own welfare. So important. A leader is neither angry nor dogmatic. Conviction does not need to be shouted, it does not need intimidation, and it does not need a sense of dogmatism, which is, I'm the only right person in this house and no one else is. That's what dogmatic is. A leader can have conviction without being dogmatic. And a leader directs their energy into, it's becoming repetition, I know, changing self rather than telling others what they should do. How's that as a simple list for thinking about leadership in your family and perhaps in your workplace? So every week we've had a bit of fun with a role play. Got to finish with one as well. I've appreciated the volunteers for the role plays. So let's look at this idea of leadership, standing on principle versus relieving short-term stress. And I'll invite my trusty volunteer, who is going to tonight be my son, Archie. And Archie is 14. And Archie last term really desperately wanted to join the community basketball team because all his friends were doing basketball and he pleaded with me to do basketball. And Archie, how's it going?
I hate basketball, Mum. I hate it. I don't want to play it. You made me do it. I don't want to play anymore.
Oh, Archie, do you remember how much you wanted to do it last year? You put so much pressure on me. You've got to love it.
No, that was last year. I don't want to play anymore. I play on the Xbox. It's much better.
Archie, your friends are doing it. Why do you hate it so much?
They passed me, Mum. I'm not very good at it. I just don't want to do it. I'll do my homework at home. I'll do something else.
Oh, but Archie, have you given it enough of a try? Please just try to keep
I've
going.
tried every week. I don't want to do it.
I've paid for the whole season.
You get earn more money. I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh, but Archie,
I've
I
got a sore
really
leg now.
want you to
my
do
hamstring,
it.
Mum. A hamstring. I can't.
Oh,
Can't you just write me a
do
note
you
so I get out of
really
it?
hate it
I
that
hate
much?
it. I don't want to do it. I'll do something else. I'll read a book.
I was so hopeful that you'd found something you really wanted to do. Oh,
Yeah, well, it was good until they, put
surely,
the balls
Archie,
in.
you've only been for 3
Yeah,
trainings.
I know,
The
3 too many.
season hasn't started yet.
I know, it was the
And
warm-ups.
I've paid for your whole
I
uniform
don't want to,
and
Mum.
your new
No,
sneakers.
we can sell that. We'll put it on Gumtree. I don't want to do it anymore, Mum. We'll just
Oh,
do something
Archie,
else.
what am I going to do? I really wanted you to enjoy it. I can see you're not
It's
enjoying
upsetting
it.
me, Mum. It's really
Well,
upsetting me.
I'm upset to see you're upset. What
Yeah.
are we going to do about it? Gosh, I don't know, Archie. Have you got any ideas? How can we
Can you
how
write,
can
can
we
you write a
sort
note
this out?
saying that I've hurt my knee? I have hurt my knee, Mum. Oh, my knee. It's killing. Can you write me a note? We'll just give it to the coach.
Well, I'll do my best, Archie.
Yeah, he'll believe it. He'll believe it, Mum.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I'm definitely. How about, here's a bit of a strategy. I think that there is a bit of a clause that if you have an injury and we
Yeah.
can get a doctor's certificate.
Yeah. I'll say anything. Yeah, we'll go to a
I
doc.
think
Yeah,
we
yeah.
could try to do
Yeah,
that.
let's do that. Oh, that's an excellent idea, Mum.
All right, Archie, I just really want you to be
Yeah,
happy.
I want to be
I'm
happy, Mum. I
sad
want to be
this
happy.
didn't work out.
Thank you. Let's do
Okay.
that.
Role play 1. Bit exaggerated, or a lot exaggerated, but do you see the themes coming through? So let's do a take 2. Standing on the big picture principles and big picture change. Hi, Archie. How you doing today?
Yeah, all right, Mum. Yeah, pretty good. You know, tonight basketball, I was thinking won't go tonight. I've got lots of homework to do, Mum. I think I'll do that.
Well, Archie, I'm really surprised you're even putting that out there. You know how strong my commitment is as a parent, that when you sign up for something,
I know,
You
but Mum,
stick with it.
that's when you like it, you know. But you misunderstand. I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't want to do this, Mum. So
yeah, Archie, I completely accept I can't make you like it. But you chose to sign up.
but
I've paid the money.
I didn't know, Mum.
Dad and I paid for
Yeah.
the money. So it's
No, you always say this.
non-negotiable.
You always say this,
I
Mum.
do. Yeah.
But I
No
didn't-
point
I
going
thought-
on, Archie.
But I thought I'd like it, Mum.
No,
And
no point.
there's another
no
7
point.
games to go, Mum. I don't want to.
Well, I'm absolutely up for listening to your thoughts when next season comes around. And you can choose to try
So I
something
have
else.
to do it this season.
No choice about it. Signed
Oh,
up.
But you nearly said no. But no.
Yeah. No choice.
No choice.
Okay. So, yeah, I've got nothing more to say about that, Archie. I've got a few things to do.
Well,
We'll talk. I'll
I'm
I'll
not happy.
see you after your
on the
homework.
record, I'm not happy
Okay.
about that. I'm grumpy.
Thanks, Archie. So, it's pretty obvious the difference. And there wasn't, I could talk in that second role play about what if Archie digs his heels in, and there could be some things that a parent can do in terms of eye position, in terms of the loss of the money needs to be made up through chores or coming out of an allowance. But I'm not even going to go there on the role play because I really want to convey that a parent who means business and doesn't engage beyond the immediate conversation when it is not a go for them, it's against their parenting principles, they say what they mean, they speak from an I position, and then they clear out of the way. I can walk away from Archie. It's in my control to do that, having said what I need to say, and it makes a big difference. And it's so good for the development of the Archies of the world. The big picture character development of learning to stick with commitments and see them through. So there are questions. We've got time for questions later, and I really welcome them around examples like that. But remember what I said earlier, that when you start to change your predictable pattern, if you have been giving in to a child and they're used to you doing that, it's not going to change overnight, and it can be very messy along the way. And you might have Archie or your equivalent not go to basketball when they said they would, and you've got to thoughtfully find a way to deal with it and stick with the big picture and the principle. And you might not get a perfect basketball season, but you will define what's important to you, and that you love your child too much to give in and give them an experience of life that is not deliverable when they go to high school, when they get a job, when they're at college or university or doing a trade. It is not deliverable to be able to just do what feels good in the moment. And what's our big picture commitment as parents? Now, how about the tension between two parents? You can be sure that with the two examples, the role play and the example earlier, there's another parent watching how the mum in my example is handling Archie or handling Daniel, and the parent is reacting to it. And I've had a lot of questions right from week 1 about this. What do I do if the other parent looks like they're really messing it up or undermining me or doing it so differently to how I want to parent my child? So I want to give this some solid attention tonight on how do you deal with those parenting tensions. Here's another quote from my parent research from parents who are struggling to know what to do with an adolescent with long-term mental health symptoms. And I think what this quote shows you is how common it is when a child isn't thriving, when any of your children appear to be struggling, or whether it's through oppositionality or through anxiety and withdrawal. You watch the other parent try to manage the child and you see their struggle, and it triggers a counter reaction in you as the other parent. And this happens, and it came through in my research, even for the single parents. If they were struggling managing their child, there would be a neighbor, a grandparent, a sibling who was involved in helping with the child who would have a reaction in the other direction. So you get this soft, hard split in parenting, the good cop and the bad cop. Very commonly, parents polarize where their energy is going into how do we fix our child. Parents polarize around, is this a sickness or is this misbehavior? Have you come across that one in your household? Is this a mental health issue or does this require firmer limits? And I would say to you, they're not the useful questions. They're child-focused questions. You're looking at the child to figure it out rather than thinking, no matter what my child is going through, how can I bring my best principled parenting to this situation? Here are some examples of parents from my research who experience this soft, hard split, saying, my husband and me, we're totally different in trying to understand what our child's problem or diagnosis is all about. And when this sickness or illness occurs, we blame each other. We get caught in this cycle of one says you're too strict, the other parent says you're too soft, and round it goes. And here are parents saying, I can see it's unhelpful if we react to each other and blame each other. And these are parents who are stepping into a new platform of confidence. They're not making a project out of changing and fixing their child anymore. And with that, they're not making a project out of changing the other parent. Instead, they're saying, I don't want to be blaming the other parent anymore. This is hard, this parenting thing. It's hard to get it right. And do you know that when I first studied Bowen's family systems theory and I could see the triangles that parents get into of the softer parent taking the side of the child, the firmer parent reacting to it and feeling like an outsider in that 3 pointy triangle pattern, so common, I could see that I was doing it in my own parenting. I could see that because I was the more involved parent with my daughters, when my husband would be more upfront on the weekend or when he was home at the end of a busy day and I was working part-time, not full-time, I would watch my husband parent and I would regularly move in and take over for him and sort things out and settle things down. And when I stepped back and started to observe the effect of that, and this theory helped me do it, and I thought, what's the effect of me undermining him? How's that affecting my children and their relationship with their dad? Do I want them to develop an independent, real, unique relationship with their dad without me interfering? And I knew deep down I wanted that very much. So in my heart of hearts, I didn't tell him, I didn't declare it to anyone. I determined that I would resign from trying to shape him up as a parent. And that's been one of the greatest blessings to our family life, to pull back, let him make mistakes. Children give you feedback all the time. If you're allowed to make mistakes, just like your children, letting them make mistakes, you learn from the feedback of the child. Oh, that didn't work too well. And you make adjustments. And that's one of the things that this theory has really helped me see what a problem it would be if I was always trying to not only make a project out of my children's happiness, but as a secondary project from my kids' happiness, I would be trying to turn my parenting partner into who I thought he needed to be for my kids to be happy. Not useful for anyone. So, child focus versus parent focus. We keep revisiting it. It's the theme of the whole course. What's the difference? In terms of parenting questions, when you are focusing on the child to determine how you're going to parent and what you think of the other parent, you're asking these questions. Is this sickness? Is this naughtiness, misbehavior? And is the other parent or the other caregiver, are they responding correctly to what I think will fix or help our child? That's where a child-focused energy investment takes you. But let's shift the energy to the parent. How can I be consistent with my principles, stand on them, demonstrate them with my actions, what I say yes to, what I say no to? No matter what my child's behavior, I've got my principles and that guides my parenting, no matter how much my child is struggling or misbehaving today. And when you focus on your parenting principles, it reduces your reaction to the other parent. And so the different question, you can see it here, how can I prevent my reaction to the other parent or to my mum who's helping me or my sister who does part of the childcare? How can I prevent my reaction to them when my child gets caught in our relationship triangle and I can see how unhelpful that triangle is? If they sense that they can get one caregiver to take their side, what's the big picture lesson for the child of operating on getting adults to take their side and pushing the other adult out of the picture and the parent being complicit in that? So, do parents need to be a united front? Do both parents or the key caregivers of children always need to be on the same page? And I'm going to suggest to you, and this has again come from Bowen's unique observations of the effect of parenting in a family, that if parents are doing always, we think that this is the way it needs to go, and one parent doesn't believe that as strongly as the other, children can see through the we-ness. They can pick it. So, what is the alternative? There is no doubt that a parenting partnership is a really important partnership, and it is so valuable to talk through what are our big picture values for our children, and to work hard at listening to each other well on those big picture meta values for the good of your children and the things that really you want to be part of your family experiences and the opportunities you give your children. However, on the issues of parenting style and areas of degree, how firmly one parent holds to a principle and the other parent doesn't feel quite so strongly, I'm suggesting to you to consider that it can be quite helpful for a child to experience different parenting styles. Because what happens with their teachers at school? Is every teacher a united front with the same style, the same level of discipline? We want our children to experience difference. When they go to work, they're going to have different types of bosses, and we want them to be able to adapt and not need every experience to be the script that we wish they could have from leaders, teachers, etc. So here's a little challenge. I love this picture of parents cycling in the opposite direction. I'm not proposing that that's a great idea. I think the best picture is that they've got their own cycles and they're heading down the same road, but they sometimes are in different positions on the road. And sometimes they're together and sometimes not. Not pulling against each other, but not forcing the other to always be the same. And the other really important one, and this is so hard to do in family life, to keep the issues in a marriage from detouring into our children. And this can happen, of course, with separation and divorce, that the unresolved tensions from a marriage can shift into making one child your ally against the other parent. But this happens in all kinds of family shapes and is something to watch and be careful of. Children really easily fill the awkward gaps that inevitably come up in our marriages. They do. You think about how much of your conversation, if you're in a marriage, how much when you're together do you talk about your children? Notice it next time you're walking together or having dinner together or making a real effort to have a date night together. How much do you talk about your children versus how much do you talk about how life is for you right now? A marriage, to build intimacy in a marriage, means getting to know each other day by day, week by week, year by year. Not, oh, I can mind read you, I've been with you 7 years or more, I don't need to ask you anymore. That's a breach in a marriage. And children easily can fill that breach with emotional closeness or a detour into making a project out of our children, so that parents can have a pretend intimacy through their focus on their child's star or their child problem. It gives a glue to a marriage that isn't real, and it isn't helpful to children to be in that breach in a marriage. So, of course, we want to, as parents and parenting partners, talk about how our children are doing, but to keep it a marriage that is thriving, for those of you in marriages, think about talking about your experience of parenting a child who's struggling, rather than talking about your perception of the child who's struggling. Here's what it's like for me. Here's what I'm afraid of. Here's where I'm insecure. How do you find it? And the same thing if you are seeing a child flourish and you're really excited and proud, to talk about your experience of seeing them have a season in life where they're doing well and what that brings up for you as a parent, and asking the parent partner what it raises for them. So a few little hints on this very important piece of a family system is ensuring that you continue to be real in the marriage, continue to talk about your vulnerabilities, your fears, your hopes and your dreams, and how you're traveling in life, and hearing each other well, rather than detour to just worrying about or making a project out of one or more children. Here's a quote, a little piece from my book, Growing Yourself Up, on what a healthy parenting partnership can look like in terms of how parents discuss their children. What do you think of it? You can enjoy your children, or you can worry about them in a measured, realistic way, but not be preoccupied together with the child. It is not healthy for a child to sense that preoccupation, and it crowds their breathing space to grow the necessary independence to be able to be responsible young people and young adults. So in this whole big picture of the Parent Confidence Project, we're thinking about what's my job description as a parent. For myself now, I still need to ask it, even though my daughters are well and truly grown. When I relate to them, I need to ask myself, with adult children, what's my job description? And be thoughtful about that, so that I don't fall back into mind reading them, thinking I know what's best for them, doing things for them without asking if they want me to. So for the grandparents in the room and the parents of older children, it doesn't stop, does it? We're still asking, what are our parent principles? So I've had a go here at a parent job description. See what you think of it. See how it measures up for you. Is my job description to resolve my child's distress, like we saw in the first role play, or the example that I gave of Sherry and her son Daniel? Is it to solve my child's problems? Is it to direct my child's thinking to a better way of thinking? Or, alternatively, have a think about these different kinds of principles for parenting. Is my job description to tolerate my child's upset or pushback sufficiently for them to learn how to self-regulate, manage their own emotions? Which, do you remember I was saying there's so much research out there that this is the most important quality of resilience and good emotional well-being and mental health, the capacity to self-regulate and not have external structures or relationships to do it for the child. To invite my child's problem solving and to be engaged with my child's thinking. What are they thinking about this difficulty they're facing? Rather than, here's how I think you should think about this difficulty. Can you see the different language? To tolerate, to invite, to be engaged, active parenting. And I've got a few more ideas on the job description. Is it to push my child, to pull my child, to make my child confident, happy, successful, popular. We'd all love a good dose of that for our children, but is that our job description? And all of that is making a project out of our child. And the alternative, to act on what I'm in control of and what supports my values. To set up boundaries rather than always trying to protect my child from risk. Have appropriate boundaries according to their age, but let them stumble and make mistakes within that good envelope that you create appropriate to the age of the child. And to be consistent, calm, thoughtful consistency. So important for a parent job description. And rather than think about, I want my child to show me more respect, how respectful is my own tone as a parent? That's a parent project question rather than a child project question. And overall, to live a principled life that will be an example to a child. So much of parenting over the last 50 years has been focused on child self-esteem as opposed to character development. Character development happens in relationship to principled adults who care about the child, show respect, and model the capacity to say sorry, the capacity to be clear and principled, to say no to things like dropping a commitment just because you don't feel like it, Archie role play. These are the things that develop character, which is so much more important than superficial self-esteem, validation, praise, and happiness. So let's go back to the parent that I discussed at the beginning, to Shari, her son Daniel, from rescuing him with his homework and his lunchbox. What do you think Shari would need to learn to be different if she applied the principles of this course? Would you be able to take over from me now and deliver? This is what Shari would have shifted. First of all, Shari would have very clearly described what she kept doing week by week with her son and thinking, what's the effect of it on Daniel? And is that the kind of effect that I want to have as a parent or not? She would become a better observer of herself. She would also observe that when her husband Matt came in and was very firm with Daniel, that triggered distress in herself, and she would often then react by telling Matt to not be so hard, and that's not helping my son, and nurturing him and encouraging him and say, I know it's hard for you, and Matt would be feeling left out and reacting quite critically to her and becoming more tough. But Shari's parenting job is not changing Matt. It's not fixing Daniel. It's, I can stop reacting to Matt and I can learn, even though I'm going to find this excruciatingly difficult, to say to Daniel, I'm sorry, Daniel, I'm not willing to bring your homework today. I know that's not going to be great for you with your teacher, but I love you and I'm committed to you learning yourself how to be responsible with your homework. So the answer is no, non-negotiable. And that's the shift. And can you see what happens there? It's not an external punishment or it's not even a logical consequence. What consequence can I have for Daniel about him forgetting? Can I logically, because he's forgotten that, can I try and think up some logical experience to teach him? Don't even need to do that. He experiences life consequences and learns from them. And it's not easy, but that's the natural consequence of experiencing living with our own choices from a wise parent, where the child knows that the parent cares about them. They're not just being tough on them because they're tired and they've had a bad day. So pulling it together, parents, mothers in particular, are so prone to feeling guilty, mother guilt, blaming self. And particularly if you have one or more children who are struggling with various challenges, behaviours, or health or emotional difficulties, it's so easy for parents to feel guilty at a parenting talk like this or school functions, comparing your children to others. It's very easy to be hard on yourself. One of the things that I discovered in my parent research that I thought was really surprising, I wouldn't have predicted it, but it makes so much sense. I discovered that parents couldn't care less about their guilt once they discovered their own agency. Once a parent had discovered that they could start making a difference to their child's environment through what was in their control, they would say, who cares if I didn't do it so well for the first few years? I've now found something that I can change in me, so I'm not going to feel guilty. All parents make mistakes. And here's a great quote from a mum who had discovered this. Just having the knowledge that I can do things differently, it stops me feeling I've been a terrible parent. And this parent is just being appropriate with themselves. I've gotten caught up in something. I haven't done it deliberately. I hadn't realised that I'm adding to my child's difficulty, but now I've realised it and I can make a change. And having that knowledge of what I can do differently as a parent helps you move on without the burden of guilt. So, confident parenting, where is your parenting? You know, every week I've done this little checklist. Do you remember the first week, how you were answering these questions? An effective parent always puts their child first, really makes an effort to be attuned to the special, unique needs of their child. They're very quick to assist their child. They're on duty. They're always ready to drop everything for their child. They're quick to seek expert advice if ever they're worried about a potential problem in their child. They will tell the child how to behave and give lots of information about appropriate behaviour, and they will make sure that they are always on the same page with the other parent. Do you remember what you thought of that list the first week? Sounds kind of like a good job description on the surface. But let's have a look now at the alternative. I'm going to focus on the parent, me, first. Not selfishly, but because I want to be a calm, clear leader for my children. Therefore, I need to be attuned to myself. What are my triggers? What are my stress levels? Do I need to calm myself down to be able to present a clearer leadership position to my children? Do I need to slow down and not rush in to do for my child and let them learn and let them experience their growing competence? Do I need to stop rushing to the bookstore to read another parenting self-help book, or to go to another parenting seminar, or to go to my GP or to a child psychologist, or to ask anyone, a friend, another parent for advice before I've figured out my best thinking. So being slow to seek advice leaves a parent being their own thoughtful, common sense grounded adult in the process. Can you see the parallel? It's what we're trying to give space for our children, is giving space for in ourselves as parents. To make clear how I will behave as a parent rather than how you as my child need to behave right now. It's what I will, what I won't do. And to not be too concerned if the other parent is a little bit more lenient than me on certain issues or a little bit firmer. It's okay. If I'm in charge on one particular occasion, the child learns to deal with what's important to me, and I'm not going to react to the other parent. But I'm not going to undermine the other parent either. So we've got to the end of it, and I wonder how your ideas have changed. But how do you measure progress? Remember I said at the beginning, it is like the big picture. It's a marathon effort, like coming out on a Monday night for 4 weeks in a row. But of course, parenting is a bigger marathon than that, isn't it? How do you measure your progress as a parent? Tomorrow, after these parenting seminars, next month, next year, how are you going to figure out if you're on a track that you're pleased with, that you're confident about? And here are your questions. Am I doing a better job of being calmer, more thoughtful, and standing on my principles? And am I doing a better job of being a principled parent over the long haul, thinking about my job description for my child going ahead years, not just peace for today? Versus, did I get my child to do and be what I wanted them to be today? That is such a roller coaster way of figuring out if you're an effective parent, by looking at how your child's doing today or tomorrow. It's going to be up and down all the time. So confidence, it comes from the marathon effort of working on your own parent job description, not being in the short term, looking at the big picture. Where is my focus? You know the answer to that question now. The second one, being a calm observer of yourself as a parent in your interactions. Observe the interactions. They're magical sources of information. So much better than any textbook on parenting. Look at your own interactions and think about the effect they're having and what you can do differently. And a quote again from the chapter on grown-up parenting. The grown-up parent who really wants to be a loving resource to their child is prepared to work on themselves and not make a project out of their child. Parenting is not easy. In making a project out of ourselves rather than our children, for myself, it's been so important to take away this idea that my children are my greatest calling in life. They're not. As a Christian, as a parent, my greater calling is to obediently trust and follow and respond to the grace shown to me in Jesus, not to try to be the best parent in the world. That's a real burden off my shoulders. Another really important piece, as I think about the difference that Christian faith makes to parenting, is that I can tolerate not having all the answers and being humble and realizing that I make mistakes and I'm not expected to be perfect, but that there is a wisdom beyond me, and just the humble act of saying, Lord, help me. I'm confused, I'm struggling, I can't do it on my own, takes us to a foundation of a parent who is thoughtful, humble, and ready to get back on track with the help of a wisdom beyond themselves. So I love this verse, and I'm very keen to leave it with you before we have a question time, which is this promise that when we lack wisdom, just that act of not trying to be our know-it-all selves, that arrogance that we have towards God, to just tone it down and instead say, Lord, I need your help. I need your wisdom. And that act of humble commitment and dependence, he promises us in his word to give us guidance and wisdom by his Spirit and his word, which, I mean, isn't that phenomenal to have that? So let me open up to some questions before we break for supper tonight. I saw a few hands up going through that presentation, so I know you're ready for some questions.
Oh, hi. Me again. I have a bit of an issue, I don't know, with I'm not willing to be generous when I experience so much disrespect. I'm pulling out from giving you that lift to my friend's house today. Mm-hmm. I've always been like a mother of my word. Like, I'm very try not to commit to something, but when I commit to something, I'm like, okay, yes, I said I would do this. Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm going to take you to your friend's house. But then I've been caught up in it myself when it's, for example, a birthday party or whatever. I've planned this birthday party. It's definitely going ahead, and their behaviour is atrocious. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? Cancel my party. You've already given my invitations out. And they kind of like, how is it okay to go back on your word and just say, obviously you're saying it is, but I don't know, it doesn't feel right to me to just say, well, I said I would take you, but now I'm changing my mind.
Yeah. Such a great question, because I think you've answered your own question better than I could, which is there's not one technique. There are examples for certain situations. The key is to do exactly what you just did then. Step back and ask yourself, what will be the effect of me changing my mind? What principle will that be exhibiting to my child? It's a great way of thinking it through. Every situation requires thoughtfulness. There's not one script for every situation. But that was just one example of what might be an appropriate representation of principles for a parent in a particular situation. But if you've got competing principles, a commitment to going to a friend's birthday party, and I'm not going to be a doormat if I'm treated disrespectfully, and those two principles are competing, you've got to really think through, how can I keep both principles? And there will be a way. The birthday party is not where you're going to demonstrate that you're not just going to be walked over and talked to in that manner, that there'll be a different way that you can say, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to make that privilege available. That doesn't affect a commitment to a birthday party. So I'm so glad you asked that question. It was really a good way of thinking through the complexity of every situation.
Thanks, Jenny. Wonderful. I just wanted to add a little comment in support of what you were saying there before. I watched a TED Talk recently where this female presenter was talking about gender roles in jobs and home. And, you know, like each of them were about 50 to 60%. There was no one parent at home, one parent at work. And she made the comment from a recent British survey that on average, the female part of a parenting couple spent 3 to 4 hours every week fixing up, in inverted commas, what the husband wasn't doing correctly as she thought.
Oops, okay. Well, let me turn that observation into a good question. Is there a gender distinction in the parenting style tensions? And very interestingly, I do think that the parent who is more on the ground with the child in the day-to-day is more likely to be the softer parent until they get exasperated, and then they step back and hand it over to the other parent. And that happens regularly. But certainly in my own research of the parenting soft-hard split, and it was only a small sample of qualitative research, so there's nothing definitive about it, but it was fascinating to me to see that it was an equal, fathers could be the soft ones as much as the mothers. It just depended on how much they were managing the challenge in the child. The other very interesting thing is that the research on parenting style differences, and there isn't a lot of it, but what I've been able to look at shows that the majority of parents do not have parenting style friction unless their child is clinically struggling. It's the struggle, behaviourally or emotionally, that triggers the difference. That parents come with their differences, but if their child is doing well, the differences are no big deal. It's the presence of a struggling child that really brings that out, and it can switch easily between the father or the mother. The soft-hard split. It's interesting. Time for a few more questions. I'm sure you've got them running around in your mind. Wait, we'll just grab a microphone.
So just following up on the basketball example, what would be a good way to handle it if the teenagers, well, I'm not going to basketball, can't make you. Like, what would be a good consequence?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. If there has been a long history of a child moving into a sense of being parentified, entitled, and being able to call the shots on their own life, if they've had that over a period of time, it's not going to turn around with one new parenting example. It's going to take some time. And parents need to be prepared for that long haul. So remember the ideas from last week on don't move into you messages and trying to corner people, avoid bribery and too many external restrictions, but stay clear on your principles. The job is not to get your child to go to basketball. The job is to stand on your principle that you're going to demonstrate how important a commitment is, even if the child doesn't cooperate with it. So how can you do that as a parent? So you keep on track with the same message. You say it calmly and you say, here's the deal. I can't make you like it. I can't make you walk in the door. I'm not going to pick you up. You're a big teenage boy and make you go in. That would be foolish of me, but I'm not going to give up on it. And if I have paid the full amount of money for the season and the cost of your uniform and your basketball shoes, so that money is going to come off other privileges for you. That's a natural consequence if you choose not to follow through on it. And that's in my control as a parent. But it won't be easy. Got one here.
I just had a question about the I position, and I feel like all our parenting lives, we've not been using that. We've been using the you need to, that whole cycle that you were saying that just continues on. And I was stepping back and listening to myself talking to my teenager, and it was doing my head in. And I thought, I need to look at all the I position statements. And you said you need to do it with an inner conviction. But do you think it's helpful to rehearse the I position, even if at the time you don't really feel the inner conviction, to practice stating the I position so that you can get into the mode of using it? Like, do you know what I mean? To break
I love that
habit.
question. I love it because it's saying, is this a technique I can practice? And if I practice it enough, might I develop some inner conviction to go along with it? And I would say it's not going to work. The inner conviction is more important than the words that come out of your mouth. And I'm so glad you asked the question, because you can use all the wrong words and still convey an I position. So you can say to a child, you need to turn that computer off now. It's a you message. It could be done with more finesse. But if your conviction is, I'm not willing to just go along with unlimited computer time, I don't know how to say it right, but I know it's an important part of my job description, then that is better than using the perfect words. So it's a really good way of clarifying that the I position is a posture, it isn't a technique. So don't be too hard on yourself on the words being more you. It's if the direction is not, you cooperate right now, it's, I am convicted that this is a really important limit to set for your well-being, then it doesn't really matter the technique.
Would you say that this course, to summarise it a bit, is really a course on healthy boundaries? Is that?
Say what you think you've
as
heard that fits with healthy boundaries.
So you've got the Bowen theories and the family approach, but to me, I'm hearing the boundaries book, the Townsend book. I'm just hearing very many similarities, but maybe I haven't noticed the differences enough.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to, in my head, look at it that way, perhaps. But it's probably much more than that. Is that right?
Well, I think that
I mean, that's a silly
I
question to
agree.
say, but
I think you've picked up on similarities, and you've heard me use the word boundaries in one of the job description pieces. So again, it's a bit like the previous question. If you think, how can I set up boundaries and be a more boundaried person in my life, is a different question to what are my principles that will guide my boundaries. So it's similar, but a slightly different starting point, so that it is about growing a mature, clear self. And one of the consequences, one of the natural consequences of getting that inner clarity is you have good boundaries, rather than starting to let me try and have good boundaries. Another great question. So we've got a few others coming here.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for great 4 weeks. Just interested in the family systems approach, and I guess does it extend past your immediate nuclear family with your spouse and your children? And, so I guess in our extended family, we have siblings and their children who we, identify a very similar parenting style and the way that we parent our children. And other siblings have a very different style with perhaps very different boundaries, or perhaps they're yet to find the boundaries. And so how does that sort of play out in the family systems and trying to deal with, those interesting relationships and differences of how you go about parenting, particularly when the whole family's together?
Yeah, that's a great question. Such good questions tonight. I mean, all of this applies beyond one's household. You take these ideas into all relationships, and one of the principles that, let's say you're defining yourself to your parenting partner, your spouse, around an issue where you feel undermined and you think, well, how would I do that within the nuclear family? And could I do that to my sister when she's looking after my kids? And could I do it to my mother, the grandparent? And it should extend the same ideas to broader relationships. One of the things that I find helpful is to speak to the other about this is when this happens, this is how it affects me doing my job as a parent. You hear that? Not you are wrong and you shouldn't be feeding them all that junk food. It's saying, I know that you love being with the kids and I appreciate that you are helping our family, but the effect of the kids getting all that junk food on my parenting, I'm really working as a parent to model healthy eating and junk food being for special treats. So it's getting in the way of me holding that, and I want to convey that to you. And that's how you can talk to a parenting partner. But I say to myself, and I say this with parents that I'm coaching, is if you cannot say that the other person's choices are getting in the way of you sticking to your job description and being an effective parent, if it's not affecting you, if it's just annoying you, keep one's mouth shut. Okay. But if you can stand on the effect it's having on you in doing your job, you've got a good eye position in all relationships. One more question before supper.
It's a very similar question. It's about the role of grandparents. It seems in many Australian families, grandparents take the approach of all care, no responsibility. And all care means...
so much fun.
Yeah, lots of fun for them, isn't it? So late nights and lots of lollies and it doesn't matter what mum and dad say. And I sort of look forward to that one day myself when I'm less responsible. Yeah. I guess it's just a question of there's something nice about that. I think for the kids and for Nana and for Grandma... I feel I'm okay with it. I think you've answered it by saying, actually, if it's not getting in the way, I think sometimes as we've raised this with grandparents, the comeback has been, you're being too harsh, as in Grandma's view is we're being too harsh, which is good to hear, and we need to reflect on that. But I think you've probably answered it by just weighing up, what's the damage being done? Can we let this ride? Is it really impinging upon our parenting or not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the question, because you don't want to accommodate to it just to keep the peace. If it really is getting in the way of you sticking with important parent principles, but you also don't want to just get into a reactivity on the soft-hard split, the spoiling, and getting into reactivity there. And that would also be a very common pattern for separated parents. And particularly if one parent is more the weekend parent who does all the fun stuff and less of the hard stuff. And so there are similar patterns across different relationships. So it's how to speak from yourself rather than telling the other person what you think is wrong with them. And I do agree that a little bit of spoiling from grandparents and having different kinds of rules, that doesn't mean that changes your rules at home. It doesn't have to. It's not, the sky doesn't fall in. So it's good to think about that. Does it really stop me operating from my job description as a parent?